Sudanandana Brajajana Ranjana Sudanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunadira Vanachari Yamunadira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktisiddhanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramhansa Paribrajagacharya Stotara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaja Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jagaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Girib Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Dabdeep Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shama Veda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaivam narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudidayat nasta parayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloker bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Holding the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're now reading from it today because today is the appearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. It's kind of an important day. We honor him in a lot of ways. We put garlands on his pictures, we put some flower petals below the pictures. We remember some of the things he did, and we praise him. But it's more than just a birthday party. In fact, many of us wouldn't even be sitting here today in this temple if it weren't for him, because he had a global vision. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. When he first met Prabhupada, one of the first things he said to him and the person he was with, somebody named Mullik, was that you are educated boys, you should preach this cult of Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking language. And later on, when he met Prabhupada, he specified a little bit more about what that actually meant. He wrote mostly in Bengali. He wrote a few things in English, but when Prabhupada was translating, he didn't translate many of his books. In fact, it wasn't until about 1960 or 1976 or 1977 that the Brahma Samhita was produced, and that was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's writings and translations and purports. But his English was so difficult to understand. He seemed to have a kind of almost unlimited vocabulary. And in reading some of his writings in English, particularly the Brahma Samhita, he used words that were sort of unusual, very remote. And I mean, when I was reading them, I used to have a dictionary in one hand to try to figure out what he was saying. And Prabhupada himself said that even in Bengali, it was more detailed and more advanced philosophically than he could compute. But he liked the sound. He liked the fact that he was very dedicated to Krishna Chaitanya, and he left feeling very good, even though he didn't understand a lot of what was said. But he appreciated the fact that Bhaktisiddhanta was a sincere, honest follower, and he was doubtful about going to the first meeting with him, because he said that in his home, in his father's home, he had a lot of visitors, sannyasis, and Prabhupada was genuinely unimpressed by almost everybody that came, even though they had a lot of mystic powers. He talked about one guy that had so much mystic power, he had this Bhaktisiddhanta power that he could reach into another country. And he said that he got pomegranates from a tree in Afghanistan and brought the branch into the house. So he had that power. Of course, nowadays in modern society, because of the internet, we can get things from far away and acquire them. And that's a form of property, but it's not pure. It's very materialistic, and you don't have to be a yogi to get it. You just have to be intelligent and want to do things fantastically in terms of modern technology. So there's a few things that we know about Bhaktisiddhanta, and later on, if we have enough time, I'm going to read one of the postings that was on Wikipedia. It's actually, there's a few inaccuracies in it, but because the devotees had a lot of input into drafting this text, it's quite long. It's a fairly good text, actually. It gives a lot of basic information about who Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was. And there were a lot of interesting experiences in his life when he was just an infant. He was born in Puri, by the way, in I think it was 1947, yeah. 47. And somehow or other, it was kind of a miracle that the Jagannath cart on its route, on the grand route, stopped in front of his parental home, and his mother brought him as an infant out to touch the feet of Jagannath. And just at that moment, it so happened that Jagannath's garland fell onto the little infant. So that was kind of an auspicious sign that something important was going to be happening in his life. He did a lot of things that were kind of, at that time, kind of disapproved, you might say, by the people where he was born in. Like he rode in cars, he wore coats of Western origin, maybe made in Manchester, and he hung out with some of the English colonizers. I think there's a famous picture of him walking with somebody named John Anderson, who was the governor of Bengal at that time. It was before independence, before 1946. But he did a lot of daring things, and it was Bhaktisiddhanta who challenged the impersonalists and established that Vaishnavism should be a force to be dealt with. It was not just a sentimental form of dancing and singing, like some people said. Particularly the Smarta Brahmins were very against him. They believed that as long as they did everything correctly in terms of their jagas, they were doing the right things. So, and there has been a many decades long dispute between the impersonalists and the personalists. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was a personalist, but he wrote in such a way that he convinced the English colonizers that Vaishnavas could write intelligently about issues of the day, about anything. And he very much impressed these colonizers of England. And his English writings are very difficult because he wanted to show that his grasp of the English language was as great or greater than theirs was. It's actually their tongue. But Prabhupada was educated at Scottish Churches College, which was an English medium college, part of Calcutta University at that time, where Prabhupada was educated, same place. But he wrote very extensively, and now some devotees are translating some of his Bengali writings into English. He wrote in a very easy to understand, I don't know, I'm not a linguistics expert, I don't know Bengali, but from what I've heard, he wrote in a very kind of, in a simple Bengali way that people could grasp and understand, even if they weren't highly literate in Bengali. So these are some of the things. He had a unique vision, and it was in part due to Kedarnath. That is, he was born Bimal Prasad Dutt. He was one of many children of Kedarnath Dutt, of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as you may know, was one of the principal people in charge of the Jagannath Puri temple, and because he was in charge of that, with a number of other people. He was also a kind of magistrate, and he's reputed to deal with some of the most complicated cases in a court setting that it would take most people like weeks to deal with it, but he just dealt with it straight away. And within the same sitting, within a few minutes, the whole case was resolved. He was highly intelligent. That was his father. And Bimal Prasad and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was very keen to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, not just in Bengal, where he was born, but all over. He sent his teachings of Lord Chaitanya, or the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya, to McGill University in Canada, with the hopes that it would begin to spread. Of course, it didn't, but Prabhupada liked him very much, and he very often refers to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in a way that he calls him, my Guru Maharaj this, my Guru Maharaj that, and he said this and he said that. So even though his translations were mainly from Rupa Goswami, the first book he translated was Nectar of Devotion, as I remember, in about when he first came to America. And in 1971, after the book was published, I think they originally published about 50,000 copies, which was unheard of in India. In India, you wouldn't be able to do anything in that quantity. Of course, he was very impressed with the roads with everything in America. Actually, he was very impressed with the number of churches that he saw. He was very, very impressed that the people were even though they were very materialistic, they had a certain Christian religious bent to them. So he kind of liked that. And then when he made that recording, he was very, very pleased with it, because something like that could only be done in the United States. It wasn't done in India. So he was, in a way, he was kind of following in the footsteps of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He came to the West, which was kind of unheard of, and it was to fulfill the vision of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that this happened. And even though the translations were very easy, in a sense, for common people to understand of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the works in Bengali. They're starting to be translated into English now, so that we can understand them and see what he was writing about. But he was a very strong advocate of Vaishnavism, and he showed people in general that Vaishnavism was not just sentimentalism, which is what a lot of people thought. Even their own people, for decades, had disputed Vaishnavism as being sentimental, and there was even a move by the Smarta Brahmins to say that it was an invented kind of religion, and it was they were chanting out loud, and they were keeping Narayan awake when he was trying to sleep. They took it to that extreme. So they complained to the Mohammedan rulers, it was the Pathan government at that time, 500 years ago, that Lord, it was kind of like what happened with Jesus Christ, that he himself wasn't, a radical, but they said from the historical records, the Romans didn't have anything particularly against him, but they consulted with the leaders of the Jewish religion, the Sanhedrin, and they were very much against him. They said he's inventing this thing, he's keeping Narayan awake at night, and so therefore it was decided that he be executed. So it's just not uncommon that devotees run into these difficulties in increasing Krishna consciousness. And it was Bhaktisiddhanta who said that books, in a sense, are more important than speech. He talked about the Mridanga having a limited jurisdiction that can only carry so far, but books, which can be distributed all over the world, are permanent, and they're lasting, and they're in a sense they're more important than what is being said. So he was a very strong advocate of putting things into writing. Everything that he said, in simple Bengali, he put into writing. Then when he was initiated, by Gorky Shordas Babaji. The accounts are that he was refused initiation initially because Gorky Shordas Babaji was a very great tapasvi. He kept to himself, and he sat near the lavatories, the urinals, because he didn't want to get involved. He had a kind of sense of humor in a sense, that he didn't want to get involved in anything materialistic. So he that's where he hung out. And he didn't even feel that he wanted to. He knew that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was an extremely intelligent, very learned personality, but he still refused him at first. And finally, after repeated requests by Bhaktisiddhanta, and on the threat that if he didn't get initiated, he was going to commit suicide. And when Gorky Shordas Babaji heard all this, he kind of melted a little bit and softened and finally initiated him. So that made it possible. And even though Gorky Shordas Babaji was functionally illiterate, I don't think he could even write his own name, and yet he initiated one of the great stalwart scholars of Vaishnavism, who was so great that he was sometimes called the walking encyclopedia. It's said that when he would read a dictionary, he would memorize every word. And so that's why even though people like me who have a little bit of a writing propensity had to look up a lot of his words because they were so unusual, so obscure, but when we looked them up, we found out they were exactly what was being said. They were precise. They weren't just put in there to impress people. They were precise. They were to impress the English colonizers, but he had a knowledge of some of these very obscure words and what they meant. So I don't know how much time will permit us to read all of this, but there's a very interesting article about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, it's in Wikipedia, and the devotees had a lot to do with this. So even though there are some inaccuracies in it, it's very accurate in the sense that the devotees were involved. And some have even said that we should write something about Prabhupada like this. Of course, this is very definitive. It's quite long. It's 7 pages and has 17 pages. Has a lot of pictures in it, and pictures of Gorky Shordas Babaji, pictures of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and pictures of Prabhupada just getting out of the convertible with John Anderson and people like that who were on the, and they made a postage stamp on his 150th anniversary in India, put his picture on it. I don't know if it was a memorial stamp. I don't know if it was used as a means of postal communication, but it was done. So I'm going to have a read of this. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is the name of the article. It says that he was born in 1874 and died on the 1st of January 1937, and that he was born Bimal Prasad Dutt, D-A-T-T-A, pronounced Dutt in Bengali. Most people don't pronounce the A in Bengali or in Hindi. He was an Indian Gaudiya Vaishnava Hindu, guru, spiritual master, acharya, philosophical instructor. These are parenthetical remarks, philosophical instructor, and revivalist in early 20th century India. To his followers, he was known as Srila Prabhupada, as an honorific also later extended to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, N. Paran. Bimal Prasad was born in 1874 in Puri. Some of this stuff is going to be repetition of what I've talked about, but it's useful to see how thorough. And if you want to read a really thorough biography, Bhakti Vikas has produced a 3-volume biography of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which is very detailed. It's even more detailed and longer than this, but I'm going to give you a glimpse of what was of how. A dictionary or an encyclopedia like Wikipedia is very taken with his life and very impressed. He received both Western and traditional Indian education and gradually established himself as a leading intellectual among the Bhadra Loka. Bhadra Loka was created by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it means the intelligentsia of impetus of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Prabhupada himself, that they wanted to convince the thoughtful, independently thoughtful people of the world that Vaishnavism was something important and should be recognized all over. Earning the title Siddhanta Saraswati, open paren, the pinnacle of wisdom, end paren, in 1900, Bhima Prasad took initiation into Gaudiya Vaishnavism from the Vaishnava ascetic guru Gaurkishore Das Babaji. So that was his initiation in 1900. In 1918, following the 1914 departure of his father and the 1915 departure of his Guru Gaurkishore Das Babaji, Bhima Prasad accepted the Hindu formal order of asceticism, open paren, sannyasa, close paren, from a photograph of his guru, and took the name Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He's also got a reputation for giving himself sannyas, which is kind of an unusual thing, but it's accepted, even though it's very unusual for that to happen. It doesn't happen nowadays. In fact, it's kind of a dangerous thing for most people. Saraswati inaugurated in Calcutta the first center of his institution, later known as Gaudiya Math. It soon developed into a dynamic missionary and educational institution with 64 branches across India and 3 centers abroad in Burma, Germany, and England. So that was showing that he had a kind of a universal global vision, that he wasn't just happy with opening 64 branches in India, but he wanted branches to be open everywhere. And even in places that didn't know Bengali or speak Hindi, like Germany and these kind of places. England. He also opened a center in Burma. So it's mentioned Burma, Germany, and England. The Math propagated the teachings of Gaudiya Vaishnavism by means of daily, weekly, and monthly innovations, and using periodicals, books of Vaishnava canon, and public programs, as well as through innovations such as, open quote, theistic exhibitions. We call them dioramas. They're little, or dolls. That was an innovation of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he created a whole museum out of these little dolls, doll exhibits. So, in a sense, he was a great, not only a great advanced soul, but a great innovator, riding in Bentley convertibles and producing sculptures that were painted dolls out of bamboo or whatever, and made him very impressive and look very real. He is known as a Dvaita, or one who had a prevalent strand of Hindu thought in India, that he was part of a prevalent strand of Hindu thought in India, seeking to establish traditional personalist Krishna Bhakti as its fulfillment and highest synthesis. At the same time, though lecturing and writing, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada targeted both the casteism of Smarta Brahmins, hereditary priests, and sensualized practices of numerous Gaudiya Vaishnava spin-offs, branding them an Apa Sampradaya. Prabhupada talks about this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that there are these pseudo-sampradayas, or he calls them Apa Sampradayas. There are 13 of them, among which are the Sahajiyas. They're sometimes men dressed like women, and they do all kinds of strange things. Anyway, I won't go into that. There are also deviations from original Gaudiya Vaishnavism taught in the 16th century by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his close successors. The mission initiated by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and developed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada emerged as, open quote, the most powerful reformist movement, close quote, of Vaishnavism in Bengal of the 19th and early 20th century. Of course, it was, even before that, there was a constant dispute between Vaishnavism and Hinduism. Doesn't go into that so much, but that's kind of understood. However, after the demise of Srila Prabhupada in 1937, the Gaudiya Math became tangled by internal dissent, and the United Mission in India was effectively fragmented. Over decades, the movement regained its momentum. In 1966, its offshoot, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, open paren, ISKCON, end paren, was founded by Bhaktisiddhanta's disciple, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in New York City, and who spearheaded the spread of Chaitanya Vaishnava's teachings and practice globally. Prabhupada's branch of Gaudiya Vaishnavism presently counts over 500,000 adherents worldwide. I don't know how true that is, but what an adherent actually is, with its public profile for exceeding the size of its constituency. So I'm going to go on. There's pictures of him as a small child in 1983. This is one photograph you can't see. I'll pass this around later on, this thing. He's a young boy, and he has kind of an innocent look to him. In 1895, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada decided to discontinue his studies at Sanskrit College. And I don't think he was a student at Scottish Churches College. I think that was an error on my part. But due to a dispute about the astronomical calculations of the principal, Mahesh Chandra Narayan, a good friend of his father, the king of Tripura, Bir Chandra Manika, offered Saraswati a position as secretary and historian at the royal court, which afforded him enough financial independence for pursuing his studies independently. Taking advantage of his access to the royal library, he pored over both Indian and Western works of history, philosophy, and religion, and started his own astronomy school in Calcutta. After the king died in 1896, his heir, Radhakishora Manikya, requested Saraswati to tutor the princes at the palace and offered him full pension, which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati accepted till 1908. And then it goes into a number of things about his life when he was a missionary of sorts. The Gaudiya Math Corps leadership consisted mainly of educated Bengalis and 18 sannyasis who were sent off to pioneer the movement in new places in India and later in Europe. Its growing ashram residence hub, however, represented a wide cross-section of Indian society, with disciples from both educated urban and simple rural milieus. Householder disciples and sympathizers supported the temples with funds, food, and volunteer labor. The Gaudiya Math centers paid serious attention to the individual disciples of their residents, including mandatory ascetic vows and daily practicing of devotion, open paren, bhakti, end paren, centered on individual recitation, open paren, japa, end paren, and public singing, open paren, kirtan, and closed paren, of Krishna's names, regularly studying philosophical and devotional texts, open paren, svargadhyaya, end paren, closed paren, traditional worship of temple images of Krishna and Chaitanya, as well as attendance at lectures and seminars. A deliberate disregard of social background as a criterion for religious eligibility marked a sharp departure to Bhaktisiddhanta's movement from customary Hindu caste restrictions. Bhaktisiddhanta spelled out his views, which appeared to be modern, yet were firmly rooted in the early Bhakti literature of the Chaitanya school, in an essay called, open quote, Gandhiji, end quote, not end quote, open quote, Gandhiji 10 Questions, close quote, published in The Harmonist in January 1933. In this essay, he replied to questions posed by Mahatma Gandhi, who in December 1932 challenged India's leading Orthodox Hindu organizations on the practice of untouchability. That's a whole other story. In his reply, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati defined untouchables as those inimical to the concept of serving God, rather than those hailing from the lowest social or hereditary background. He argued that Vishnu temples should be open to everyone, but particularly to those who possessed a favorable attitude toward the divine and were willing to undergo a process of spiritual training. He further stated that untouchability had a critical and elite aspect. On 18 September 1935, the Gaudiya Math and Calcutta dignitaries offered a reception to two German converts, Ersten George Schlues, who Prabhupada mentions, and Baron H.E. von Kuth, I don't know what happened to him, who arrived along with Swami Bam. Then I'll read one more paragraph because our time is pretty much over. Bhaktisiddhanta maintained that, if explained properly, the philosophy and practice of Vaishnavism would speak for itself, gradually attracting intelligent and sensible people. However, despite considerable financial investments and efforts and success of the Gaudiya mission in the West, the Gaudiya mission in the West remained limited to just a few people interested to seriously practice. Remained limited to just a few people interested to seriously practice Vaishnavism. The importance of the Western venture prompted Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to make the Western mission his main theme of his final address at a gathering of thousands of his disciples and followers of Champa, Bengal. Either Srila Prabhupada was there or heard about it, and that was one of the reasons why it gave him a strong impetus to go to the West. And he thought that I'm going to go to the West, why not go to the most powerful and influential part of the West, the United States of America and New York City, which is where he went. In his address, Bhaktisiddhanta restated the urgency of importance of presenting Chaitanya's teachings in the Western countries, despite all social, cultural, and financial challenges, and told, open quote, "I have a prediction. However long in the future it may be, one of my disciples will cross the ocean and bring back the entire world." Close quote. So if anyone wants a copy of this to read more about, and it is also available on, if you have a phone, you just can surf and find it on the internet. It's very comprehensive and thorough. So are there any comments or questions anyone wants to make? And I feel very honored, by the way, to be chosen to speak on this very special day, and to say that I want to say that our presence in this temple is due mainly to him, who had a vision to spread Vaishnavism all over the world. Yes.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. I just wanted to say that there's a program in the temple that's starting at 10 o'clock. We have readings, bhajans as well, then Pushpanjali. So if anyone's free, please come along. We don't normally have many people for that program, so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's appearance day and disappearance day was very, very important. One of our most important festivals. In other temples it's honoured, with great enthusiasm. So please, everyone, come along if you're free.
A time to remember. Any further comments or questions? Yes?
Hare Krishna. There's a nice pastime with Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. He was once about to have darshan one morning, and he forgot his glasses, and his disciples were really concerned. He was kind of at the back of the temple, and they were like, "Maharaj, we need to get your glasses so you can see the deities." And he thought he would give these disciples a lesson, and he said that we should never see Krishna as an object of our vision. Instead, we should try to achieve certain qualities to become objects of Krishna's vision. And that's just very sweet.
So, in a sense, he was disputing the aphorism that seeing is believing.
You understand?
Hearing is believing. That
Yeah.
taught us that.
And that's another point I've seen with Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. He was once going around Mayapur Dham, and a lot of his disciples ran off to have darshan when he was given Bhagavatam class. And then he said that quote what you just said just then, how important it is to hear.
One of the things he really admired about Prabhupada is that even though Prabhupada didn't comprehend a lot of the philosophy in his talks, because it was very intricate, he was impressed, Bhaktisiddhanta was very impressed with Prabhupada would stay there and hear it, even though he didn't understand everything. He was very attentive to hear him and to appreciate his speech, even though he didn't understand exactly what he was saying. But he was impressed by the urgency of his delivery. That he wasn't just talking about Vaishnavism, but he had an urgency to spread it all over the world. And especially in India, where he opened, I think it was 64, it said, mosques.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Anything else? Okay, we'll stop at that point. And do you want this? So you don't always want anything that I print out. Thank you very much.
Maharaj, please.